Are we in the end times? Are we truly seeing Bible prophecy unfold before our eyes? We see so many things happening in the world, and it's all happening at the same time. And many people question, are these the end times that Jesus spoke about to his disciples, and many prophets in Scripture told us that this time would come? Or are we kind of just speculating that this could be the end times and hoping that it could be? Is there any real proof that we're through the generation that Jesus spoke about would be just before his return? And this is like a part two. This is going to give us real foundational truth of God's amazing prophecy and how accurate. There's no prophecy I've seen as accurate as God's prophecy, and this will show you exactly why. Like always, what I'll ask you to do is to watch the whole video just to get the full context, and I promise by the time you're finished you'll be excited and get a true understanding that God's hand has been in everything this entire time, that the 2,000 years from Christ to now wasn't accidental but something that is done on purpose. And remember to smash that like button to get this out to as many as possible. This video is answering the question that this man stated. This statement, have a
We
listen.
are not in the biblical end times. People have been making these false predictions for thousands of years, and it has gotten only worse in social media. If you don't want to watch the rest of this 3-minute video, then just listen to the next 10 seconds. The Bible proves that nobody knows when the end of the world is actually going to happen. I highly suggest you look at Matthew 24:36. But about the day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father knows. So all of these Christians who claim to be devoted to God are blaspheming against the Word by claiming to know more than even the Son of God. Like I've said before, people have been making false predictions about the apocalypse for over 1,000 years.
This is a very common question that many Christians ask. I've been emailed, and people send me messages saying this all the time, that many Christians have been saying it's been the end times for 2,000 years. And I politely like to tell them that they were incorrect about being in the end times. Anything that was before 1948 has absolute relevance, that it wasn't truly the end times, and I'm going to show it to you, because Israel is the most important piece of the puzzle when it comes to the prophetic timeline. The other big question is, why was there such a big gap of 2,000 years when Jesus said he's coming soon? And that's what we're here to clear up, and I'm going to show you how scripture and prophecy that God gives is absolutely amazing. Now when you look at this timeline, this is the timeline kind of from start to finish in the overview. Obviously to the left hand side being the start. Now when it comes to Israel, we have to look to them. Why has there been a gap of 2,000 years from Christ's time to now? Now it really starts in Ezekiel 4. He was told, God told him to lie on his side for 390 days, a day representing a year on one side for Israel, and then for Judah lie on that side for 40 days, which is 40 years, in a total of 430 years of judgment and servitude on the house of Israel. Now we know that they fulfilled 70 years in Babylon of that punishment, of that judgment. Now this wasn't something that was new. Even when we go back to the time of Moses with the Hebrew people at that stage, there would have been, obviously we were headed to the promised land, but their disbelief and disloyalty to God caused them to end up going into the desert for 40 years, that generation had to die off before they inherited the promised land. So this is not a new concept, it's something that's happened many times. The main thing to point out, when it talks about a year, a prophetic year, it's 360 days. Our own calendar today is 365, but we have to concentrate on the 360 days. So we know that 70 years were fulfilled in Babylon. The Jews were still disobedient to God. Now when we look at what happens with punishment wise, Leviticus tells us, and an overview of this, God gives a harsh warning, and he sends judgments on the people of Israel because of their disobedience, and different judgments. And it says at the end, still if you do not obey, I will punish you 7 times greater. Now, remember, at the time of their freedom, when they were freed from the Babylonian Empire, when you calculate the number of years that was left, there was 360 years. And because they were still disobedient, when you multiply that 360 by 7, we get 2520 years. To make it even simpler, you get 907,200 days. The most exciting part about this, when the decree was sent out that the people could head back to Jerusalem, that they got their freedom from Babylon, from that day, which was in 536 BC, when you add the days that was applied of servitude to Israel, which will be 907,200 days, it brings you to a very important date when you go all the way, and it brings you to May 1948, which we know is a huge, important day when Israel became a nation in one day, which was also spoken of in scripture through the prophets, that can a nation be born in one day. This to me was absolutely eye-opening. Not only is that date very important, so from that time, when you add the days in, brings you up to 1948. But some people say maybe it goes by Jerusalem and the temple. But even from the time the temple was restored, when we look at it in 517 BC, and we add in the time of servitude, the 907,000 days, etc., the time that it brings you up to is June 1967, which was the time that Israel reclaimed Jerusalem. Scripture is very, very clear. God's prophecy is pinpoint perfect. The dates line up. 2,000 years from Christ's time to now wasn't a coincidence. It was actually their time of servitude and the time of the Gentiles had to be fulfilled. And in 1948, that time came to an end when the fig tree or the olive tree came into bloom, and that was when Israel became a nation. We are now in the period of grace, as I believe, and we're coming very, very close to the return of Christ. So this was just to show you that it wasn't coincidental that we had this time period. Anything before 1948 was never the end times. But from the time Israel became a nation was the ticking clock. More so even when in 1967 when they regained Jerusalem. And the dates point and the dates line up to perfection. I just wanted to give you a short view, an overview. I'll be doing a full video on this. But remember, God is always in control, and keep the faith.